Hello everybody, my name is Zeke. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk about some of the reading plans I have for the spring. I'm very happy it's finally spring and that the winter is kind of over. We're getting some warmer weather and hopefully that'll encourage me to really tackle some of these goals, I'd say. None of these are really set in stone. These are things that I kind of just want to get to and hope that I get to. But also if something else comes up, if I want to read something else, then I will go for it. If I don't have time to read something here in the spring, it's okay. I will get over it and it's not a big deal. But there are definitely plans. There are things I aspire to, and we'll see if we get there. First, I want to talk about some books that I have not read as well, that I do want to read. And the first one's a very big one. That's The Stories of John Cheever. And this is, if you couldn't tell, a short story collection, the stories of a very prolific 20th century American author. I read one of his short stories, The Swimmer, a few years ago at this point, and really fell in love with it. I think it's one of actually my favorite things I've ever read in my life, and really has stuck with me. There was a movie made about it a bunch of decades ago, and I got a chance to watch that as well just last year, and I really loved that, and it reminded me that I really wanted to pick this up, and I'm finally getting to it. And this is something I don't really know how I'm gonna tackle this. It's like over 600 pages. There's like there's a lot of stories in here. I think it's basically every story he ever wrote that he didn't hate. So there's a lot to get through. And I don't think the best way to do it is just to read it all without stopping. Like, I think I'm gonna read this interspersed between other books. Maybe I'll read like a story every day or a few stories and then like read a book or something like that. I'm not gonna treat this as like a traditional book where I just read it through. But maybe I'll get really into it and end up doing that anyways, so we'll see how it goes. I'm very excited for this. Don't really know exactly what to expect. I'm expecting really good writing though, and I'm expecting to really enjoy a lot of these, hopefully. So I'm very excited to finally get to this. Next, I'm continuing one of I don't think I made this like an official goal for myself, but something that has always been in the back of my mind for like the past year, and that's reading reading a lot of Toni Morrison, because I've really enjoyed every book I've ever read from her. She's becoming, if not already is, one of my favorite authors, and so I want to read Jazz by Toni Morrison. At this point, I don't really look into what any of her books are about before I read them. I've kind of just been picking them up and saw this in a bookstore and decided to get it. So here we are. Hopefully I'll get to this. No idea what it's about once again, but expecting incredible writing, expecting to absolutely love it, because why wouldn't I? So those are the only two books that I own that I haven't read that I'm officially like trying to get through in the spring. There will definitely be others. I'll probably get stuff from the library throughout, but nothing concrete, nothing I have ready, and nothing that I'm like, I need to finish this soon. I need to really get through this. But obviously I will be reading other books. These are kind of just goals, as I said, plans, aspirations, blah, 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 blah. So the next thing I'm gonna talk about some like little goals, some maybe more long-ranging things. I really want to reread East of Eden. This is a very large book. It may not look it just from this, but it's very thin pages, about 600 pages, and pretty dense. Not something you can get through in a day, but very incredible. I think I consider this one of my favorite classics I've ever read. And at this point, I think it's been almost 3 years. It might have only been 2 since I first read this. And I really want to reread it because I loved it so much. And I think that this is the kind of book where when I was reading it the first time, I was just really engrossed by the story. I was just figuring out what's going on, and I feel like because I loved it so much, if I read it again, kind of knowing the basic outline of what happens, remembering that, I'll get even more out of the incredible writing, the incredible characters, and the setting, which I think is so vividly described in this book and was one of my favorite parts on my first read. So I think I'll just get an even better experience on reread. But this is a big endeavor, so I do need some time to block out to read this, and hopefully I will find some time to do that. And if I do, then this is top of the list, because I've started rereading some of my old favorite books, and it's really been working for me, and I think that this would be a really, really good one to have for that list, and something I've been wanting to reread basically since I first put it down. So really, really excited for that if I get a chance. For another kind of specific one, I want to read this book called The Tyrant Cormorant by, let me look at the author's name. I need to get my facts straight. Seth Dickinson. Tyrant Cormorant is the conclusion of a trilogy that I started reading in 2022 and absolutely loved the first book. We're following we're in a world where there's like kind of this empire that goes around and colonizes everything in its path, and we're following a woman who comes from one of the islands, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, that was colonized, and she's kind of rising in the ranks within this empire, and we're kind of expecting her to try to take it down and stuff like that from the inside. And the first book is amazing, very, very good. Lots of twists and turns, very fun ride, lots of stuff going on, and really built my expectations really high for the rest of the series. And then I read the second book and absolutely hated it. I hated basically every choice that was made. I thought the writing took a dip. I thought the characters took a dip. I thought that the plot was stupid and did not continue on from the promises of the first book in any way. And that being said, though, I feel like I have to finally read the third book, because obviously that put me off reading the third book it's been more than a year at this point. And I have no idea what to expect at this point, because people seem to like the third book, so maybe I will enjoy it. I hope I will, but also, do people only like the third book because the people who got to the third book already liked the second book, which I hated? We'll have to see. But I think I owe it to myself to read this, because I really did love that first book so much, and the premise is so interesting, and I kind of do still want to know what happened. So we'll see. I have to be in the right mood. I have to be in a mood where I'm okay if something is a little slow or is something that I'm not fully invested in, which is a very hard mood to be in. So I'll have to hopefully get to a point where that's something I'm willing to pursue. But if I do, then I'm very excited to finally see if this series was a good thing or a bad thing for me. But we'll see how that goes. Okay, for reading, this is very general. I need to read more nonfiction. That's just a goal that I've had in the back of my mind for forever. I read fiction, and I read the occasional memoir or essay collection, and that's great. I love reading novels and such, but I really want to try to read some more nonfiction, because nonfiction is important and also can be very, very good too. So I just feel like I'm doing a disservice to myself by not reading as much nonfiction. So very generally, I'm making the goal to read only one nonfiction book. Don't know what it'll be. Hopefully it'll be something more interesting. Obviously, I want the books I read to be interesting, but I'm hoping that I can pick something that maybe is a little more narrative, so I'll be excited to read it, and it'll feel like reading fiction. It'll be a good gateway into getting me into reading more nonfiction, because I don't think I'll ever be the person who loves nonfiction, spends half their time reading nonfiction. That's not going to be me, but I think occasionally reading nonfiction books is something I really want to do. I really want to get into and think is very important. So hopefully I'll be able to follow through with that one. Now, my last two kind of plans are very, very random. First, there's the third book in a series coming out. So this is kind of similar. This is kind of a similar situation to the Cormorant situation. I forget what the series is called, but Seanan McGuire wrote Middle Game. That's the first book in the series a few years ago. Maybe more than 5 years ago at this point. And I read it, and it was really, really good. Very, very strange, kind of, I don't know how to describe it. I guess it's fantasy-ish, but there's time travel stuff involved, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a very long time. You have two twins that have very similar names, and it's very silly in a lot of ways, but I think that I just remember loving it so much. It was so good, so unique. And I was so excited when the second book was announced, and I read it and I absolutely hated it. And I thought that it was boring and anticlimactic, and did not live up to the first book at all. And so here we are, there's a third book coming out. The thing about these books is that they all kind of follow different characters. And so this third book might be completely different. I think it's called Tidal Creatures, if I'm getting that right. And so that's what's kind of bringing me to a point where I'm not gonna let the second book, me hating the second book, really detract from me wanting to read the third, because I think it's gonna be completely different. And hopefully it'll be more like the first book than the second book. And hopefully I'll really, really love it. Because I really think I could, but at the same time, because the second book was so just disappointing, I have no idea what I'm gonna get out of this, and it comes out at the very beginning of June, like June 1st probably, and I will read it then, hopefully, if I can get my hands on it without actually buying it, and we'll see how it goes. So very cautiously optimistic about that, but also very excited, because it's there's a lot of cool premises in that series, and I'm hoping that we go towards that like cooler route rather than what I hated so much about the second book, which was just basically everything. Lastly, and maybe most importantly, I want to reorganize my bookshelves. So this is obviously not a reading plan, but it's book related. There are things I like about my bookshelves. I like these two shelves, but what you can't see is the top shelf, which I think looks awful. And also that you might be able to tell I have 0 space left. So I really need to figure that out. And I want to reorganize stuff. I want to make sure the books on my shelf are the best books I could have out there. I don't know, I want my bookshelves to represent what I actually love so much, and I think I do a pretty good job about that, but I think at this point we're overflowing. I can use some readjustment, some reorganization. It's been quite a while, I think, since I've reorganized my bookshelf. I did reorganize like the top shelf at some point, but it looks really bad and I want to fix it. So that's my kind of reading related goal, and the last kind of goal I have for the spring. So we'll see how all of these go. I'm hoping I follow through with at least 2 of them, because at the end of the day, like I'm really good at not following through with plans. Like we'll see how many of these actually get done. Obviously it'd be great if all of them happen, but I'm not seeing that future, and I'll be happy enough if just some of it gets done. So that's where I am right now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you want, and I will see you in the next one.